thrill me.
This show is part of the Thrill Me Podcast Network. Experience more on Facebook and YouTube.
It's Review It Man, reviewing what he can. Movies are his jam, so let's get twisted, man. It's Review It Rob.
Hey, yo, welcome into the show. Appreciate you taking the time to listen to this show, man. Hope everybody out there is doing great. This is the last time we talked. If you're a new listener, awesome, man. Welcome in. We have fun over here talking movie reviews, spoiler-free, of course, as well as all kinds of news, including DC and horror, which is mandatory for every single episode, and all kinds of other fun things to talk about on this show, man. So welcome in. We're going to be talking about the film Priscilla this week, maybe talking about another film as well, but Priscilla is the number one movie to talk about on this week's episode. This is the drama romance film that just hit Max. Priscilla, that is Priscilla Presley, the film. Of course, she was Elvis's wife for a number of time. So this film is going to be through the eyes of Priscilla. Sofia Coppola is the director, tells the unseen side of a great American myth in Elvis and Priscilla's long courtship and turbulent marriage from the Germany army base to the amazing Graceland, and this deeply felt, ravishingly detailed portrait of love, fantasy, and fame. The film is rated R for drug use in some language, has a runtime of 1 hour and 53 minutes, and I watched the movie on Max. Rotten Tomatoes critics have an 84%, pretty favorable score there, while the audience is not as favorable at a 63%. IMDb has it at a 6.6 out of 10. So what were my thoughts on the film? So, like I mentioned there, this movie is through the eyes of Priscilla, who was, of course, married to Elvis Presley, the man, the myth, the legend that was Elvis Presley. So it's through her eyes, through her story of things. It is based on a book that she wrote back in the 80s, I want to say it was. So it's coming from, of course, her viewpoint and all that stuff, and she was an executive producer on the film, and she saw the film, and we'll get into that later about her thoughts on the movie, as well as other Presley family members on their thoughts of the movie itself. But speaking of the movie itself, let's go ahead and jump into this. This is an A24 film, so if you've seen those movies, you kind of get the idea of what their style is, and most of the time their style is story-driven dialogue movies. You know, of course, they do have some crazy horror films and mind-messy kind of movies, but this movie itself, not really mind-messy or anything like that. It is very much a story-driven, dialogue-driven tale of love, but as well how it goes good and how it goes bad. Has fantasy involved in it, kind of, not really, but because this is through the eyes of Priscilla's and what she lived through and what she talks about. It's really, I talk around myself not to spoil stuff, but the majority of the film, most is their story, right? And there's a lot of Elvis in the movie, which makes sense. Even though it's called Priscilla, there is a lot of Elvis in this movie because that is a huge part of her life, and that is what the book was focused on, was her relationship with Elvis and all that stuff. So it starts with where they met and goes all the way up until they divorced, which obviously is not a spoiler. That is public information. So it goes through all that stuff, and I think it does a very good job of telling that story of what it's like to be in love with a celebrity and just in awe of them and being married to them. I mean, Elvis Presley is one of the biggest stars that has ever existed, and even so many decades after his death is still one of the biggest known celebrities of all time, and as far as I'm concerned, will always be known as one of the biggest celebrities of all time and my favorite singer. So the film itself gives you Priscilla's look through things and how she goes through things and her story and her build through the beginning with Elvis and going through everything that was in there. As we mentioned, it was a turbulent relationship. So Callie, hoping I'm saying her name right, Callie Spaney, maybe I messed that up. She is playing Priscilla in the movie, and she does a very good job playing Priscilla. Just trying to look at her filmography real quick. She was in The Craft Legacy. I have not seen that. Pacific Rim Uprising, Bad Times at the El Royale. Fantastic movie. I need to go back and watch that one. And she'll be in Civil War, releasing later this year, as well as Alien Romulus, releasing this year as well. So I liked her portrayal as Priscilla. She's very sweet. She's very kind. Priscilla herself is closest thing I guess you can say to an angel. She's a very sweet, sweet lady and portrayed as a very sweet lady in this film. You will absolutely love her throughout the movie. The Elvis in the film is played by Jacob Eldory. Terrible names, but he's playing Elvis in the film. You know him. You probably saw him as Saw Brown. You may have seen him in the Kissing Booth movies over there on Netflix. He's on the Euphoria show, and he apparently turned down a audition for Superman Legacy. So it is what it is over there. So those are your two stars of the film. Like I mentioned, Priscilla, very well done, very well portrayed. Absolute sweetheart. You will love Priscilla in this film, which, not surprising, the movie is based around her and her story and everything along that lines. As far as Jacob goes as our star Elvis, it's going to be compared, of course, obviously, to the Elvis film that came out, 2022? So, was that 2022 or 2023? It was not last year. It was 2022. Yeah, definitely not last year. No way it was last year. Yeah, 2022. Okay. So it will be compared to each other. His performance, and of course Austin Butler's performance, which was nominated for an Oscar and all that things. And of course, however you go through it, I think both of them did perfectly fine playing Elvis. The voice, maybe Jacob was a little closer on voice wise, but look wise, they both look very, very close to Elvis. Maybe Jacob's got a little bit there as well, but um, it's interesting to have these movies so close back to back. With Elvis coming out in 2022 and this movie coming out last year in 2023 at the end of the year. So I was interested. Obviously, like I mentioned, Elvis is my favorite singer, so I'm interested in anything Elvis and getting to see that stuff. And when this movie was coming out, I was like, okay, how's this going to work? How's this going to go? But I do have interest in it. Ended up coming out late in the year last year. Ended up missing in theaters, but thankfully it just hit Max, and I was able to check it out here. And my thoughts overall: enjoyable movie, interesting movie, intriguing movie. Like I said, it is a dialogue, story-driven movie. It's not going to be like the Elvis movie that came out recently, where it's about Elvis's, you know, rise to fame and superstardom and all that. When Elvis and Priscilla met, he was already a meteoric superstar, right? He was at the point that they met. It was around the time where Elvis was becoming like a movie star. It's around that time. Army movie star, all that stuff. It was at the time where the music was a little too controversial, and he had to go over here and was drafted into the war and all that stuff, and then came back and then started doing movies and all that stuff to get his image back out there and all that. So it's not gonna be glitz, glamour, fame, fortune, Elvis on stage, Elvis's music's not in the movie. Actually, they couldn't get the rights to use Elvis's music in the film for whatever reason, due to the fact that Elvis Presley Interstate said no to using songs in the film. Um, Apparently, according to Sofia Coppola, they told us they don't participate in things they didn't originate. So there you go. Not gonna hear Elvis songs in the movie, but it's more focused on their romance, their story. I believe the name of the book Priscilla wrote was Elvis and Me. So it's based on that book. So as you can tell from that story, it is going to be based on their relationship and the the early loving stages of it to the we don't get along. To the turbulent times, to the tough times, to back to the love, back to just it's a turbulent relationship without a doubt. It is a wild thing to see. It does not paint Elvis in the best of pictures. You're going to be none too happy with the king of rock and roll while watching this movie at times, and then there'll be other times where you're captivated and charmed and absolutely love the man. But the film itself, very well put together. I like the writing of it. I like how they build things. I like how it builds from beginning to end. I like how they all work everything out. They tell a story of love and loneliness and the desire and fame and fortune to not being the end all be all, and struggle with there is drug use and language in the movie, so drug use struggles to finding yourself and all that. So I think story wise it's really good. It's worth the watch. It's worth the time to invest into it. hour and 53 minutes, so under 2 hours. You'll be good to watch that. It is streaming on Max, but I think it's very well put together. If you're interested in Elvis stuff, it is something to check out, especially to see Priscilla's side, because we all know Elvis. I think everybody in the world knows Elvis, in some ways, shape, or form. And again, we just had a movie that came out not too long ago about the man. So there's all that stuff. Now, when it comes to these biopic films, there's always the question of how true, fact fiction wise is it? And this movie is honestly very factual from what I've learned and done some research into. Like one of the things that wasn't, well, I don't want to go into that. So there is something, but it's not anything too major. It involves a dog. Other than that, the rest of the film is very fact and true to Priscilla's vision. So speaking of Priscilla and her vision and all those things, Priscilla was asked about. She obviously saw this movie. It was about her, and she did a Q&A at I guess the premiere. I would say, yeah, she did a Q&A at she was at a Q&A event at a casino in Las Vegas, and was asked about the movie and all those things. She said she was very concerned about the movie, but thought it was, quote, right on, to be honest with you. Talking about director Sofia Coppola here. Had no issues with her. Said I have no problems with what she did in any way with the movie. Coppola spoke on it, saying Priscilla, when she first saw the final movie, the first thing she said is, "Callie, really? That's how I felt." She really expressed that, and she couldn't believe how Jacob's voice. She said it just sounded just as much like Elvis, so that was so gratifying to hear that from her. End quote. Of course, she also did love Baz Luhrmann's 2022 Elvis film as well, to which she said was beautifully done. On the flip side here, Lisa Marie Presley, before she sadly left us, she's no longer with us, was not a fan of the film at all. Her comments came with saying she disapproved of Coppola's vision of the film upon reading the draft of the screenplay. Quote, "My father only comes across as a predator and manipulative in this movie. As his daughter, I don't read this and see any of my father in this character. I don't read this and see my mother's perspective of my father. I read this and see your shockingly vengeful and contemptuous perspective, and I don't understand why. I am worried that my mother isn't seeing the nuance here or realizing the way in which Elvis will be perceived when this movie comes out. I feel protective over my mother who has spent her life elevating my father's legacy. I am worried she doesn't understand the intentions behind this film or the outcome it will have." End quote. So yeah, Lisa Marie, not a fan of this movie whatsoever. Doesn't think it lives up to Elvis and paints Elvis in a bad light. Like I mentioned, Lisa Marie is sadly no longer with us. Priscilla is still with us. So, like I mentioned, after watching the movie, it does not paint Elvis in the best of pictures by any means, but Priscilla did say that she holds positive memories of him. Quote, "It was a different time. I wanted to have fun with him. I wanted to see what it was I wanted to see what it was that he liked." So it's divisive between the families there. It's not going to be well received from, diehard Elvis fans. Like I said, I mentioned he's my favorite singer in the world, but stuff is what it is. Everybody has a voice and everybody has their their side. And this is Priscilla's view of everything. Again, this is from a book that she wrote back in the 80s, and she was producer on the film, and she saw the final version of the film and was fine with it. So you can take it how you want to take it. Me, overall, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was interesting. I loved the way they brought to life the time periods of the film. It looks very accurate to the time that they would have been together. Again, the movie itself is the love story of Priscilla and Elvis, through Priscilla's eyes, the struggle of being in love with the biggest star in the world at that time, and of course, star forever in Elvis. So there you go. Be warned. Like I said, there is drug use in the movie. There is it's a turbulent relationship, so there's some things you're gonna see that may be a little triggering, if you will. But overall, again, dialogue film. So if you like films that are story driven, they deal with story and they progress beginning to the end of that time, then there you go. Give it a try, give it a watch, if you're interested in seeing those things. But I did enjoy it. I thought it was pretty well done. So Priscilla was the movie I ended up reviewing first here. Before that, I had another movie that I did watch and was going to be the review until I saw Priscilla came out. The movie is called Finestkind. It was rated R for some violence, drug material, sexual content, and pervasive language, crime drama film that I watched on Paramount Plus. Stars Jenna Ortega. Tommy Lee Jones is also in the movie. The main stars are Ben Foster and Toby Wallace, who are playing brothers in the film. Complete opposite lifestyles. The older brother is a fisherman just trying to get by. The younger brother is growing a life, getting ready to go to college, learning, all that stuff. Commercial fishing kind of going on in the movie. It is very much a crime drama film as it is portrayed. Critics for Rotten Tomatoes have it at 28%. Audience very favorable, 60%. Close to that 28%, right? It was fine. It's a film I probably won't watch again. Like I said, Jenna Ortega's in it. She's not in it much. Tommy Lee Jones is in it, not in it all too much. They have their side characters, if you will, in the movie. They have some importance. Tommy Lee Jones a little more than they both have important roles in the film. It's not focused on them. That's what I'm trying to get to without saying it. But yeah, that's streaming on Paramount Plus. It was fine, but again, I'll probably never watch that movie again. So I wanted to get that in there. I did watch that movie, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit there. But yeah, there you go. All right, so let's jump into news. We'll jump into DC first here with let's see, Joker should be returning in the Batman 2. There's been rumors of the Joker returning, who's played by Barry, right? Barry? Barry. Can't ever say his last name. Barry Cohagen. Cohagen. Who was also in Burn with Jacob Ellery, so that works out. Brief glimpse of him. Didn't really get to see him all that much, but you just kind of heard him in the first The Batman film, and he's rumored to be returning in the Batman 2. So we'll see how that all turns out and works out. Of course, we have the Joker film starring Joaquin Phoenix coming out this year, and then the Batman will be hitting theaters next year. But good luck to him, man. People take their Jokers very seriously, apparently. A character who is known for comedy, very dangerous, very diabolical, very evil. But people get very crazy about the Joker's performance on screen. And from the looks of it, looks like a different take. So we'll see how that all turns out. Another rumor is that the Jurassic League is getting an animated film. I have not seen confirmation from James Gunn on this, but the Jurassic League is what it sounds like. It is a film, an animated film, or a story that takes place in the Jurassic times with our with our Justice League heroes being, and villains, dinosaurs. So sign me up for it. Animated film. I would have fun with that for sure. But that's a rumor of another animated film that they're working on. Not a rumor. What we know being confirmed is that Will Friedle is returning to voice Terry McGinnis in Crisis on Infinite Earth Part 2. If you don't know who that is Batman Beyond's Batman. Will Friedle, of course, famously known for playing Eric Matthews on Boy Meets World, one of the greatest shows of all time. And of course, people do love Batman Beyond. They've been craving a Batman Beyond live-action movie for quite some time. But the animated Crisis on Infinite Earths films are happening. Part 2, Will Friedle will be returning to voice Terry McGinnis, the character he very famously voiced on Batman Beyond. Speaking of Will Friedle, just take a side turn here. I was watching a blanking on the name, but I'm pretty sure it's called Brotherly Love podcast, which is the Lawrence brothers, famous actors, brother trio, who you probably know if you're as old as I am. But Blossom, Boy Meets World, all kinds of awesome stuff they did, and Will Friedle was a guest on the show, and I had an absolute blast watching that episode. Came out, I think, a couple days ago. Had an absolute blast watching that. They seem like the funnest freaking people, man. So check that out. Again, I think it's called Brotherly Love Podcast, or just search Will Friedle. It should come up since it's so recent. and watch Boy Meets World on freaking Disney Plus. Greatest show of all. One of the greatest shows to ever exist, especially during the 90s. Let's see. Last bit of DC news here. If you have not seen Aquaman 2, it is going to become very easy or easier for you to see as it'll be hitting Max on February 27th. Aquaman 2 The Lost Kingdom, February 27th. That's like 2 days, 1 day by the time you're listening to this. So if you're listening to this fresh, or it might be already out by the time you listen to this, but Aquaman 2 The Lost Kingdom will be streaming on Max this week. There you go. Going from there, let's jump over to horror. I'm including this in horror for multiple reasons. One, if we say Jaws is a horror film, I'm going to say this is a horror film. And two, it gets shared on, anytime there's news around this franchise, it gets shared on all kinds of horror film sites. So, Jurassic News, Universal Pictures and Amblin Entertainment have found a new director for the next Jurassic film. Was going to be another director. That didn't end up happening. Now they have found a new director in Godzilla and Rogue One director Gareth Edwards will be helming the new Jurassic movie. They did say Jurassic World film. It's supposed to be a new era for the Jurassic films, and so I'm just going to call it Jurassic film until we know more. But of course, we had Jurassic Park trio, we had the Jurassic World trio, and this seems like it'll be a new era of films, and we already have a release date with July 2nd, 2025. Listen, I'm in the bag for these Jurassic movies. I find enjoyment in all of them. I know the last movie wasn't overly enjoyed by a lot of people, but hell, I got to see Dr. Alan Grant begin, so I can't complain too much. I'm a little more easier going when it comes to movies than other people are. So I'm excited, nonetheless, about more Jurassic stuff. Let's see, Beetlejuice, the Beetlejuice sequel, very appropriately named, that will be releasing later this year. Got an update from the star, one of the stars of the film, Jenna Ortega herself. Talking about her again, she was in Finestkind. She said, quote, "I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but I am Lydia Deet's daughter, so I'll give that away. She's weird, but in a different way, and not in the way you'd assume, I would say. The relationship between Lydia and Astrid, who is her character name, is very important. And it's also very strange because it's a lot of catching up and putting the pieces together of what's gone on in Lydia's life since, which is nice. I think for anybody who loves the character and is excited to see her again," end quote. Ortega also added that bringing the gothic aesthetics of the Beetlejuice franchise to younger audiences in 2024 is part of the reason she was excited that they were bringing it back, saying, quote, "I feel like studios nowadays, of course, they want people in seats, and you've got to do reboots or sequels or things like that to get people entwined. Nice. They put entwined. I thought it was intertwined, but entwined. But to bring Beetlejuice back of all of the stories is so good because people need to revisit weird, strange, off-putting stories. Again, we need to introduce the younger generation that's always on the phone to new artistic and creative ideas. The weirder you get with it, the more people you can get to see it. I think we'll probably do a lot of film in general." End quote. Michael Keaton has also been talking on the sequel, saying, quote, "On one hand, you go, well, of course, it's the most fun. It looks like fun. As you know, it doesn't always work like that," Keaton said. "The one thing that Tim and I decided early on from the beginning, if we ever did it again, I was totally not interested in doing something where there was too much technology. It had to feel handmade. It's the most exciting thing when you get to do that again after years of standing in front of a giant screen pretending somebody's across the way from you. This is just enormous fun," end quote. Like I mentioned, Beetlejuice will be hitting theaters later this year. Excited to see it, and more excited even more to learn that they're going a practical route with the film as much as possible and doing awesome stuff over there. Fantastic cast. Good to see Michael Keaton back in the role of Beetlejuice after we got to see him back in the role as Batman last year. Seeing him back as Beetlejuice. Jenna Ortega, fantastic actress. Can't wait to see what she brings to the role. Lydia is part of the film. Winona Ryder's back, so gonna be a good time to say the least. Jumping from that, we go to The Purge, which is having another film in its franchise with Purge 6 on the way. We've got an update from the star of a good bit of the Purge movies, Frank Grillo, saying that the script for Purge 6 is already done and that James DeMonico is returning to direct the film. James directed the first 3 of the Purge films and is returning to direct what is being called the possible last entry of the film series, but of course they already had a movie called The Final Purge, and of course here we are with another Purge movie. Frank said, quote, "It would be the last of the last of the last. It's like the guy who keeps retiring. James Monaco is going to direct it if it happens, and it's a matter of money. It's a matter of how big they want the movie to be, how much money they want to spend on the movie, considering they've done a lot in this franchise, but it's a great script," end quote. So it sounds like it's has a script and a director. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like it hasn't been officially greenlit here, if I'm reading that correctly. Um, so yeah, we'll see how it all works out there. But the Purge franchise is possibly still on the running releasing schedule. I don't know what I'm talking about. All right, let's see. Last bit of horror related news here. The Crow has been moved up to this year and will be releasing on June 7th, 2024. The reboot stars Bill Skarsgård as the iconic character The Crow in this modern reimagining. This film will be taking the John Wick spin-off film Ballerina spot. That film would stars Ana de Armas and has been moved back pretty much a whole year to June 6, 2025. Anytime news comes up with The Crow, I'm reminded that I still have not seen that movie. Of course, the one everybody loves. So I will get around to seeing it, I'm sure, especially before this movie comes out, or maybe not. Maybe I should just give it. I'll probably see it anyways. But Bill Skarsgård, fantastic actor. I don't think anybody can take anything away from him as a performer. So, you know, I'm not. I'm not one of those people that gets overly upset about movies being remade or rebooted and all that stuff. I've never understood the upset people get with that stuff. It's just, typical social media being upset about nothing. But there you go, man. Surprising movie. That movie is coming so soon. June 7th this year. Been a snake bitten franchise to say the least. So now that we're getting there, man, let's hope everything works out and goes good for this film, as it'll be hitting theaters this year. All right, going from there, we actually got some Wizarding World news to talk about on this episode with Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav, who has to be one of the absolute worst CEOs of all time. He's just throwing it out there. Like, maybe he's not the worst, but he just makes some terrible decisions between films being canceled left and right and all that stuff. So, tough stuff. Or films being fully shot and done, and they're like, we're not going to release it because we want a tax write-off. Just whatever. But they have confirmed that the Harry Potter series will be debuting, or aiming to debut on Max in 2026, saying, quote, We've not been shy about our excitement around Harry Potter. I was in London for a few weeks ago with Casey and Channing, HBO CEO of HBO and Warner Brothers Television, who those two people are, and we spent some real time with J.K. Speaking, of course, J.K. Rowling, the creator of Harry Potter, and her team. Both sides just thrilled to be reigniting this franchise. Our conversations were great. So, what is this series about? All right, so there's an end quote there. So they're enthusiastic. They're excited about bringing the Wizarding World back to life, which why wouldn't you be? Let's see. So what is the series about? Quote, this new Max original series will dive deep into each of the iconic books that fans have continued to enjoy for all of these years, end quote, said Casey Bloys, who, again, chairman, CEO, HBO, and Max Content. Let's see. Saying it's going to be a faithful adaptation. The project would run for 10 consecutive years, is what they said. So the whole idea of each season being one season of the book obviously would not be correct, because there are less books than 10 years. So they'll be stretching some things out here, but it sounds like very detailed stretching they should be doing. For those who say Fantastic Beasts could be leveraged to provide those 10 seasons over the 10 years, Warner Brothers Discovery has specified during the announcement that Fantastic Beasts will not be a part of the series. Fantastic Beasts seems to be dead in the water over there. I don't know. Last bit of news I talked about on the show with Fantastic Beasts is that it's on hold at the moment, and we haven't heard anything else. So, probably not looking too good for more Fantastic Beasts, especially with all their focus now going over to the series. Good to know they're trying for 10 consecutive years. Look, I know some people have waned on the the Wizarding World, I have not lost my love for it whatsoever. It's so ingrained in my soul at this point, and it's still doing good business. Like the stage show did fantastic. The theme parks representation is always busy, always thriving, always doing great things, always releasing new stuff. Heck, they have a whole new land coming in 2025 for the Wizarding World, so it's still thriving there. And the video game that came out recently, Hogwarts Legacy, was the highest selling, best selling game of 2023. So, yeah, you're not getting rid of the Wizarding World. And you obviously cannot say it's not successful anymore because it has been highly successful. Um, the Fantastic Beasts films are what they are. I enjoyed all three of them, of course, because again, Wizarding World is ingrained in my soul. But and some other people have very much enjoyed those films. But it is what it is. People didn't see those movies, whatever. Again, the Wizarding World itself is still vibrant, still talked about all the time, and is doing very well. And this show is something I'm highly excited about, as well as a lot of people are. Of course, we're getting new cast as far as legacy cast members, if they'll be back for this. We shall have to see. There's not a whole lot known about the show other than they plan on doing a faithful adaptation of the books to the series. So, and I think it'll work very well as a series. I think you get more time, an opportunity to build out everything, do some more things in the books that they didn't have time to do in the movies. So excitement, nonetheless, from me on this. All right, going into other news, the C director Sam Mendes plans to make 4 separate movies, one from each of the Beatles members' point of view. They will intersect to, quote, tell the astonishing story of the greatest band in history, end quote, leading up to their 1970 breakup. Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and the families of the late John Lennon and George Harrison have granted full life story and music rights for these scripted films. Sony Pictures Entertainment will finance and distribute all 4 films theatrically in 2027. What an interesting idea. They could have just done one big movie about the Beatles, but to do 4 separate films, all from each one's perspective, is so cool. Like, I like that idea a lot. That's really awesome. It sounds like they're all releasing in the same year, so that's good on them. Instead of stretching that all out, good on them. I mean, there's 4 seasons in a year, right? So you can at least one each season. Who knows? But interesting. Good eye. Good thought. Good, interesting idea. Can't wait to see how that all turns out and works there. I mean, music films have really taken off within the last couple of years. We've always had like music films. You can go back to a long time ago. You can go back to a really long time ago, or you want to come back a couple of decades to. I mean, we had Selena, which of course, gave Jennifer Lopez her whole career. Very well received movie. We have uh, Bohemian Rhapsody, which really took off, and I think it's really spurred all of these films that we're now getting about music stars. We had Rocket Man come out a number of years ago, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I believe had very good reviews as well. Elvis, mentioned that earlier. That movie came out recently. We've got an Amy Winehouse movie coming out this year. They're working on a Michael Jackson film, which looks like it's going to be pretty dang good. They've got his nephew Jafar playing him from the shots they've been releasing. Spot on. And Ridley Scott's doing. Which one is Ridley Scott? Ridley Scott is in talks to direct a Bee Gees movie. So, music movie, bio movies are not going anywhere. And the Beatles, like the quote said, is the greatest band in history. I know that's met with divisive thoughts from a ton of people, but it's hard not to agree with that. They are the biggest band to ever exist. So it's even if you're like a diehard metalhead like my brother, it's this band inspired so many people. Like they're the inspiration for so many bands. Even if they're like, there's no way that their slow music like is an inspiration for this heavy rock band. It is. The Beatles have inspired so many artists. So, and their music is obviously timeless as they continue to just dominate. And they released a new song recently, their final song. They released that, did fantastic. The Beatles are timeless. Like I mentioned with Elvis, just timeless, timeless artists because of how talented they were and just insanely huge stars. So, I can't wait to see what they do with those 4 films. Let's see. I'm gonna mess up somebody's name once again because I am me. Aban Mas Baccarat, who has been cast recently as the Thing for the Fantastic Four MCU film, has revealed on an episode of Jimmy Kimmel that, quote, in the past, I think they've done a suit. Michael Chiklis wore a suit that apparently was very uncomfortable, and it's kind of, we're past that. It's a little kind of cosplay, kind of amateur, that kind of stuff now with the technology we have. So, end quote. So, again, I don't know the full story on Marvel stuff. So, the Thing, from what I can tell, looking at it, is like a guy that got made into a bunch of rocks. Michael Chiklis wore a suit, looked cool, looked good enough. But he's saying that's cosplay, which I don't agree with. Holy crap, that's a terrible thing to say. These suits, a lot of people put time into these suits in these movies. And of course, the other people in the film would be wearing suits as well, right? But he wants to lean to a technology thing. Sounds like he just doesn't want to wear a suit because he thinks it's going to be uncomfortable, is what that sounds like. Wild. Wild, wild, wild. I think that's the problem we run into. Like, Michael Chiklis looked fine as the Thing, right? And it kind of goes back to the Ninja Turtles of it all. It's like we've got this new technology, but the Ninja Turtles still looked the best in 1990 with the first movie. So, like, we're relying way too much on technology. Like, I get what he's saying with this technology. We can probably make it look a certain way or closer to what the comics were going for, but I thought Michael Chiklis looked fine in that suit. So I don't. It's a weird thing to say. Also went on to say that when asked about the image they released, said that it looked pretty 60s theme. He said, "quote That image does seem to be 60s theme." End quote. But apparently does not take place in the 60s. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But they haven't given us much information about that Fantastic Four movie yet, so we'll see what happens there. All right, let's see. Other news: Warner Brothers and Legendary Entertainment are in negotiations with Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, with Tom Cruise attached to star. The film is currently untitled, but will be Alejandro's first English language film since The Revenant. What a film! What a film The Revenant is. This will be Tom Cruise's first film since signing a deal to develop and produce theatrical films over there at Warner Brothers, which will be his first project with them since Edge of Tomorrow. That was what, 10 years ago? How long ago was Edge of Tomorrow? Edge of Tomorrow was a while ago. That film confused a lot of people with what the hell the name of the movie was. Edge of Tomorrow 2014. So yeah, 10 years ago. Go me, dude. I liked it though. I like that movie. Tom Cruise. I like Tom Cruise. One of my favorite actors easily. So cool, man. Good on them. Like I said, The Revenant, very good movie. So can't wait to see what they can do there with Tom Cruise in the fold. And the last bit of news for this week's episode is a bit of news I thought was really cool, and I wanted to include in the episode because this is really cool, in my opinion. Maybe you have to be a cinephile to, be really into this news and think it's really cool. But a coalition of directors led by Jason Reitman have closed a deal to take over the historic Village Theater, which is 93 years old, movie palace that has been the favorite site for movie premieres since its opening in 1931. The owners of the theater include of course, Jason Reitman, but Christopher Nolan, J.J. Abrams, Guillermo del Toro, Christopher McQuarrie, Judd Apatow, Steven Spielberg, Christopher Columbus, Bradley Cooper's in there. Alejandro, that we just mentioned, he's in there. James Gunn is part of it. Rain Johnson. Just an unbelievable, huge list of names. Phil Lord, Chris Miller, Todd Phillips, Seth Rogen. So many names here, man. They will be, of course, now in the deal for the Historic Village Theater. Inside the house, the directors plan to showcase artifacts from their personal collections, including props, wardrobe items, and film prints. In time, there are plans to add a restaurant, a bar, a gallery, but the theater will remain open throughout. Jason Reitman said, quote, I generally remember lining up around that corner for as long as my father was taking me to movies. That was my introduction to the movie-going experience, getting there early, lining up around the corner, and feeling like I was part of a community of people who loved movies, who could not wait to see a film on opening night, and who knew that the conversation before and after the movie was almost as important as watching the movie itself. End quote. So freaking cool, man. Love to see that. film is so important to these people that they have saved this 93-year-old movie palace, the Village Theater. Man, that's really cool to see all these people come together and do that, and to see that. I mean, that's something. If I ever make it out there, is something I would love to visit. I mean, they're turning it into this amazing experience with a theater, but also having props and wardrobe and film stuff in there. It's just so freaking awesome. Like, and it'd be something I would love to see in my lifetime once that gets complete and all updated and all that stuff. That would be so freaking cool, man. So that'll do it for this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed it, man. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Priscilla, if you've seen it, or Finestkind, if you saw that. DC stuff. Let me know what you're thinking of the DC news, the horror news, all that stuff. Are you excited for more Jurassic films? Are you excited about another Purge film? Are you interested in seeing the Joker even more? Let me know what you're thinking, man. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments there. But nonetheless, appreciate you taking the time to listen to this show and hear me ramble on for looks like over 40 minutes here. I love doing the show. It's an absolute passion project. Just past 4 years doing it and plan to do it as long as I'm humanly possible to can do the show. So, like I said, appreciate you taking the time to listen to the show. And as always, hope you remember that happiness can be found even in the darkest of times if one only remembers to turn on the light. Talk to you all next episode.